Once you have all of your images where you want them, you can look at your layers. Your layer panel has all of these images in here as separate layers. And Photoshop works in layers. It's kind of like a transparency on top of another transparency on top of another transparency. So our background image is white. Then we have a transparent layer 1, which was the first picture we put on. Our second layer is the second picture we put on, and our third layer is the third picture. And they work in a stacking type of order. So my third picture is on the top of the stack. So it kind of shows you that this one is sitting in front of the second and first picture. If I want that picture that is a rectangle to be behind this second picture, I can drag it around and reorder these layers. So I can click and hold my mouse down, and you see that your hand cursor turns into a little grabby hand, and then you can just drop it right in between, and you can see it highlight a little bit. You see how if I sit there, it's not highlighted yet, but if I drop down to here, it recognizes that space between, and then I can release. And now you can see that that image fell between those two layers. So stacking images and moving images um, can be done and reordered, and you just need to make sure you're on the correct layer in order to move them. So you can only move the layer that you're on. Okay, so there's my different move tools. All right, and then coloring the background. So I know that I just did certain things to these particular layers, but if I want to do something to the background layer, like add a color, I have to be on the background layer. So adding colors is as simple as a paint bucket. In your toolbox, you have a paint bucket, okay? And you'll notice that there's a paint bucket, and if I click and hold my mouse, there's other tools that are very similar to a paint bucket. It's like a fill tool. So anything that has this little black triangle in it means there's paint brushes, but there's also other tools that work similar to the paintbrush that are housed below that. And things that do not have a triangle in the corner, like your move tool, is just your move tool. But your paintbrush, anything, your eraser has different erasers that would work and do certain things too. So anytime you see a little triangle. So if you don't have your paint bucket available and you see your gradient tool, all you have to do is click and hold and choose your paint bucket. And the paint bucket will fill the background as long as you're on the background, the foreground color. Your colors for your paint bucket are always on the bottom of your toolbox. So right now it says it's black. If I want to change the color, there's several ways to change it, but if I want to change it from my toolbox, I can just click on the foreground color and it will give me a color picker, which allows me to, I could drag up and down in the side rainbow here, or I could choose to get to a general color and then choose colors from there. And I can also pick a color from the document. So if you see that if I roll out onto the document with my mouse, I have the ability to choose this purple color or this red color or this flesh color. Not many colors in this one, but for this particular document, if I want a light red, I'm going to pick in the lighter colors. If I want a darker red, I'm going to pick in the darker reds. So you have lots of options to pick particular colors from your document itself. And once I have a good color and I like the color I've picked, I can hit OK. And then because I have my paint bucket active, it is going to pick my foreground color, because this is what it's telling me. These are all tool options. It's going to pick the foreground color that I have chosen and fill it that color. So clicking and holding, it just filled my background color that color. Another feature are different things you can do to an image. Okay, and these are layer styles. I love layer styles because they create a little more dimension to some of your pictures. And your layer styles are in your menu. So I'll show you several places. But your layer down to layer style give you many different options for doing things. You could add a drop shadow, which we'll do. You could add an inner shadow, an outer glow, a bevel and emboss, all these different types of things to layer 1 image, okay, because I'm active on layer 1. So here we're going to add a drop shadow. So if I choose layer from here down to layer style and then choose drop shadow, it is going to give me by default a slight drop shadow under there. It also gives me the dialog box to change that drop shadow away from anything that it decided on its own. So by default, it automatically gave it a drop shadow, but if I want the distance to be a little further, if I want the spread to be a little different, or if I want the size to be a little fuzzier, I can choose that. And it gives you a little preview, but I like to look at my image itself because this preview doesn't really show me a whole lot, but it also allows me to change the angle. So this is just something I would suggest you play with because there's lots of different things that you can try and change and do. Okay, so I'm going to hit OK. And now I have a drop shadow added to my first image that I brought in, and that effect is listed right here. So if I want to put that exact same shadow on these 2 layers, a really nice quick feature is to hover on this FX, and FX is the default for effects. So if you say FX, FX, FX really fast, sometimes it sounds like FX. So I think that's why Photoshop named it FX. But if you right click, you can copy layer style. I can choose layer 3 and I can right click and I can paste layer style. So now that happened to this particular document, the exact same effect. I can right click again on layer 2 and say paste layer style. So now I've added drop shadows to every one of these particular images. I've filled the background and I've created my own shadow box.